Hello. Hello, everybody. Welcome. This is the first live lesson I do on YouTube ever. So I'm sorry I was a little bit late trying to get everything right. Anybody there? Hello. So today I'm going to talk about um, self-care. And why am I calling a self-care revolution? And I really want to invest into this idea and to this concept of a self-care revolution. Why do we need the revolution? Because the systems that we had before, up to maybe 20 or maybe 30 years ago, they were to a certain extent being able to bring some healing and some solutions for mental health. Unfortunately, those systems are not enough. They're not coping with the demand for support around mental health and around emotional well-being. That's why we need a revolution. We need a collective revolution, not just in an individual level, attending therapy one-to-one, but we need a society that's taking care of it themselves, a society that's caring for mental health as um, a collective. So not just focus on the individual person's needs and problems, because the problems are so big. The level of trauma and the level of distress we're going through, it's so vast that no matter how many therapists we have, it's not going to be enough to address all the issues that we are facing nowadays. So I think, and I really believe this to be true, that we need to transform how we live, we need to transform how we care for each other, and we need to transform in a collective level. But that's very, very hard to do when we are working and struggling with our own personal issues. So I created this short sessions, the short video lessons to address something that is very, very important, but that can help people to feel empowered and start addressing their own personal needs for self-care. Because this is something that you can learn by yourself and you can implement those changes and start seeing some results. And hopefully that can have a bigger impact, not only in your life, but also in your community or the people who you come in contact with in your family, in your work, and in your neighborhood. But it's very difficult to do more for the environment or for society if we are struggling with our own personal trauma. And self-care is something that you can learn. You can learn the skills, you can learn what it means for you and how it's so important. And this is a daily exercise, it's a daily practice. It's not something that you do once in a while. But once you do more of your own self-care, your own personal changes and personal healing, you can also do more for those around you. So that is the idea of this revolution. There's another aspect of why am I calling it a revolution. The old model and the model I learned to be a psychologist in that model is an authoritarian model. So it's based on the medical model, the traditional training, where it follows what the doctors learned how to practice medicine. So of course it comes from Freud. So, he was a doctor, and many of the psychotherapists after him were also doctors. That very first generation and maybe the second generation of therapists were also doctors. And there is good coming from that, of course, because they understood the body and the physiological parts of behavior, of emotions, and all those things. That's brilliant. And I also learned those things. But there is a whole other part of human life that is not understood, or is not best understood under the medical model. So sociology and theology, anthropology, other sciences, other systems thinking more recently, other sciences have a lot to contribute to personal healing and collective healing in psychology. And we need to bring this revolution to mental health care. Mental health care is not going to be improved by doing more of the same that has been done for 100 and something years. We really need to change the system. I'm so passionate about this because There is so much more we can do for ourselves, for each other, as professionals, like myself as a psychologist, but also teachers and parents and ourselves in general, to help each other along the mental health healing journey. But that's not going to come from the medical model. Not all of us are going to train as doctors, and that's not even necessary. So, one aspect that has been highly controversial in psychology is the sort of parent. Well, I was going to say parent because, of course, Freud was talking about parent-child relationship, but therapist-client relationship or therapist-patient relationship. And nowadays, there are so many studies and so many other approaches in psychotherapy and psychology that challenge that model, that imbalanced model of someone who is the authority in that subject and someone who is not the authority in that subject. And, this imbalance of power influences a lot the relationship, because there is a limit to how much the patient can improve or can feel empowered in their choices, because there's always this reference to the parent or to this authority figure, which was the therapist. So I'm talking about this revolution towards something that's more egalitarian. Yes, professionals have knowledge, experience, and a lot to offer, but it's not the only authority or the ultimate authority. The authority should be really the person who is receiving the help, who is there to learn about themselves and their unique ways of coping or their unique ways of managing their symptoms or their unique needs. And that's not going to come from a textbook. That's not going to come from a prescription that is generalized. It has to be individualized. It has to be for you or for me. So that care that is very individual needs the person who is receiving the care to be really engaged and participating in the process. And this model of authority patient is not the best for that sort of process to happen. As I said, because the authority is always in the position of power. So that's why I'm calling it a revolution, to invite people to be participating equally in their healing process. And that's why self-care is one of the main areas where people can learn to empower themselves and to feel confident and to work through some of their difficulties. And with support. And that's why I'm offering also support online, and I'm offering a group so people can come and ask questions and have the support. And I also can offer some of the guidance and techniques I've learned along a long time I've been practicing. But I am an ally and a partner, not someone who is going to hopefully not tell you what to do or how to do. It's about building that connection together and working things out together. So I just want to check something because I'm a little bit worried that this is not going live. Is this going live? I hope it is. Okay. Oh, it looks like it is. Okay, thank you. Obrigada, Clarice. Thank you. I don't know, I was talking here for a long time without checking if it was actually working. So today is about what is self-care. Hi, Kate, I can sit now. I can look at the messages. I'm learning how to do this, actually. So today is about what is self-care and what isn't self-care. It's a reminder for some people who already know what I've been teaching, but it's also new for a lot of people. So self-care is not something that you do occasionally. It's not something once a week. It's not something like a bubble bath that you have on a Saturday or when you have a bit more time. This is also, of course, enjoyable, and it can be very helpful for your body to relax, for you to feel cared for, or to just enjoy a little bit of luxury, a little bit of pleasure. Yes, that is self-care. But self-care is something that is a daily activity, a daily need. So it's not something to do once in a while. And definitely it's not something expensive. it's not something that needs to, don't need to buy anything to work on your self-care, because there are lots and lots of aspects of self-care that are just you taking care of your own needs, your own understanding, and enhancing your mind, expanding your mind, and looking after your emotions, looking after your body, learning to be in a healthy relationship. I'm talking here about the different areas of self-care. And so it doesn't need to be expensive. Actually, it doesn't cost anything to do any of those things. You can learn a lot by watching videos, reading, and online. There's so many resources. But I also feel, and that's why I created this support group afterwards, after the lessons, and I plan to continue them weekly. There is something that happens in a relationship with someone else that is really listening and really paying attention to your process, to what you need. That cannot be replaced by a number of videos, a number of lessons, a number of books. Nothing like that can replace the experience of being heard, the experience of being in a relationship with someone who is giving you the attention, that care. Because that relationship, those caring relationships, they allow us to grow and to change, because we can move away from trauma, we can move away from pain, because we need each other, we need this connection with each other. And nowadays, with the internet and the Zoom calls, we can connect across the world, and this is amazing. I have clients in the 5 continents of the world. I work with people from New Zealand, from Angola, from Eastern Europe, Brazil. I have people all over the world, and this would not happen some years ago. And I want to use this space online to make more connections, to provide more of this human connection. Of course, it's not the same as being in the same room, but it's as good as. Our brain is quite happy with that. So there's something about coming together and being heard and being community. So you can release the old stories. You can be really part of your present, not just repeating the old stories and the old fears. So I feel like self-care is so important because, as I was saying, we need this collective care and this collective healing. And if we are in survival mode, if we are just surviving, which is not just, okay, if we are surviving, if we're caring for our basic needs, but we can't really give much to the world outside, the whole society is suffering because people are in survival mode or coping with very difficult states of mind like high anxiety, depression, and a huge number of illnesses we have nowadays, physical and mental. So self-care is one of those tools, or those, it's not even just a tool, it's like a concept, but it's an approach to your own self, to your relationship with yourself, that can help you in your healing, help you to move forward and just enjoy life more and be able to relax. And with that, you can give more to the other people, and hopefully expand your reach. But mainly it's for your healing, it's for your own development and your healing. So, and of course, I believe that that will eventually benefit other people too. But it's about getting out of survival mode and getting into a more relaxed, trusting space. And that is really, really essential for our well being, to be able to come out of this fight and flight mode that is so draining and so exhausting. So, even the World Health Organization talks about self-care, and their concept of self-care is about preventing disease, promoting health, coping with illness, and coping with disability, with or without the help of a healthcare provider. So they're also encouraging society and people to take more charge of their health, because they also know that it's not possible just for healthcare providers to be the only responsible people for healthcare. We are all responsible for healthcare, and that happens in an individual as well as in a collective level. So they talk about the health of engaging community, of reaching out and feeling empowered, feeling self-sufficient, and all these things. So it's something that everybody's talking about nowadays. And I think that there is something that is easy to forget, that every day we are in relationship with ourselves. Sounds quite obvious, but it's true. We tend to forget that we have this relationship with ourselves. We have the responsibility for ourselves. And we go a lot on the autopilot without stopping and asking, what do I really need to make my life easier or more enjoyable or less stressful today? What can I do today to do something for me that takes me a little bit closer to a less stressful life, a more joyful life? So having those moments during your day that you ask yourself those questions is really, really important. So that brings a sense of self-reliance. It builds our self-esteem. When we start to ask those questions and we take action, or we make a little plan of action, we are building our self-esteem, saying, yes, I can trust myself. I am a good self-carer to myself. I can do this. So it's something that cannot be forgotten. I keep repeating this, but it's true. We have to keep remembering that our relationship with ourselves and our responsibility for ourselves is really, really essential. So it has been studied that people who are aware of their needs and practice self-care, they live longer, obviously, because they are more aware of their health needs. They can take care of the health needs quicker and in a more efficient way, reduce the stress levels. They can have a more efficient immune system and be more productive and have better self-esteem. So self-care is the bedrock of all these good things that we can experience in life. So it's very essential that we invest some time and some attention to our self-care. And there are different types of self-care and they change over time. This is something else we need to remember. It's not because you have a good exercise routine that there's nothing else I need to do. I eat well, I sleep well, I do my body self-care very well. But what about other parts of your life? If you're living under very stressful circumstances in your relationships, that's also going to impact your physical health. So we've got to look at the whole of your life and your areas of your life to see how everything is going and which areas need a bit more attention. There are different types of self-care as well. Something about a long-term self-care plan or actions that you do is something very, very important. So, for example, people who practice meditation for a long time and that practice keeps building up and it really becomes part of themselves, their brain benefits from that, from those changes of learning this skill, learning this special way of experiencing peace or experiencing a different type of awareness, a different level of consciousness. So this, let's say the person meditates every day for 20 minutes for years, that can actually make changes in the brain. We know that. But also there are short-term self-care measures, short-term self-care, because things change. And what worked a year ago or a week ago, you may need to adjust. You may need to bring something else in because your stress levels are higher. So maybe meditating 20 minutes a day is just not enough anymore. You may need to do something else. Maybe you need to take longer breaks during the day, or you need to make sure you sleep earlier, or you take time off the internet and the social media contact. You've got to look at what is possible to do to increase your self-care so you can manage that stress level in a better way. So that will be a short-term intervention. But again, when the stressful situation goes away, hopefully you can go back to your normal routines. But it's very important to adjust and be checking in with yourself what is needed. So I will just mention a few things about the different areas of self-care. And I'm going to mention about the obstacles to self-care. And then we're going to finish the lesson today. As I'm aware of time, I can be talking forever about self-care and what I feel is needed for a change. But I want to keep it short. So the 5 areas of self-care that I'm going to look after this week, this next few weeks, The spiritual self-care, so talking about our connection with nature, our connection with life in general, our connection with the whole, things that we not necessarily remember but are part of us, and how can we feel part of the whole, and how can we feel connected to life. And there is so much around the spiritual well-being and spiritual self-care that can be explored in a safe way. And I feel like that's one of the areas that can really bring change to mental health. It's something that has been neglected for many people, has been a neglected area, and I think it can bring a lot of relief and a lot of peace and other good feelings that are neglected in other areas. So spiritual self-care is something that I'm very passionate about, and I feel more rituals and more safe places to talk about spirituality are very needed. I'm going to talk about the body self-care, so those physical needs and also the care for our environment around us, our physical environment, they are also very, very important. And some of us struggle a bit more with that than other people, but I think it's so important from the psychological point of view to remember that if our body is comfortable and feeling safe, our psychological needs are also almost there. You know, we have done a lot of work if we are feeling safe and comfortable in our bodies. And that does not mean that you may not have pain or some other sort of symptom going on in your body. But if you have your physical needs met, that's such an important factor for your psychological well-being. I'm going to talk about emotions and how we can look after our emotional life and be at peace again with a range of emotions, not just choosing some emotions and fighting against some other emotions. It's really important to be able to navigate all of them comfortably. And that's part of emotional self-care. The mind, looking after what we think, how we think about what, how we make sense of our life, how do we explain things, and checking out if your belief systems and your ideas and thoughts are helping you to feel grounded and feel at peace and feel strong in your life, or if your thoughts are actually causing more stress and anxiety. So looking at the mind and how the mind works is so important as well. And also relationships, learning how to have boundaries, learning how to notice when things are becoming difficult, and taking responsibility for your relationships. This is a huge area as well, and I'm really looking forward to listen to people in the group and listening to what is needed in terms of relationships, because we don't learn this in school, do we? We don't learn much about interpersonal relationships and how can we be safe? How can we construct a good, healthy, strong relationship? We learn a lot from our families, sometimes from videos, sometimes from books in my day, but we need sometimes to update our understanding of relationships. So yes, these 5 areas of self-care, I'm going to spend a week taking care of each one of them. And I just want to mention here some obstacles to self-care. Of course, self-care it covers everything, right? From our physical survival to our spiritual connection to how we are in society. Everything is part of self-care. So I am very aware that we are here talking on YouTube. I'm here talking on YouTube and talking to anybody that can access this video. So one big obstacle to self-care is the reality that people have no means to do their own self-care. They may not have enough food, they may not have shelter, they may live in a very dangerous place. And of course, they are in survival mode because they are their physical existence is being threatened. So it is very different for someone like myself who's living in a very privileged, safe space, and I have all my physical needs met if I remember to take care of those physical needs, but I have the material resources to do that. So I just want to make the point that for those people, which is the majority of people on the planet, their survival is the first priority. They are not going to be, they may still be doing their self-care in other areas, but of course, their need for food and shelter and safety is very, very big, is the biggest one, right? So it is very different for each person, wherever they are on the planet. So I just want to acknowledge my privilege and maybe the privilege of people who are listening to me too, because it is very different for us. There are obstacles in society for self-care too. So in certain places, women are still not allowed to go to school or to live by themselves or to live a marriage that's abusive. So in those societies, in those places, of course, again, their survival is the most important factor. So they may not be able to challenge a relationship or establish boundaries because it is dangerous and they may be a danger of in doing that. So there may be societies, rules and laws that are not enhancing self-care. But nowadays, in the Western world, at least in the UK and many other countries, a lot of the issues around self-care are psychological. Our difficulties to acknowledge our needs or to notice that we need to take some responsibility for our care. And we may not feel deserving of care. We may feel that other people's needs are more important, or we may have learned that we can ignore the signals from our body or the signals from our emotions. We can neglect those needs. So a lot of it is psychological, and that's why it's so important to learn about your own psychology, your own understanding of yourself, and start to take some measures to address those needs, because that is possible. It's totally possible to change how you see yourself and how you take care of yourself. Is there any questions? Anybody who is watching, is there anything you want to ask? Because I am aware of the time. I want to keep it short. And I just wanted to give this introduction today to what I'm doing here and why I feel it's really important, but it's really an overall. So I look forward to hearing from you in the comments or in the support group. If you come to that, it will be really great to see and to hear more from you. Okay. So if there is no questions, I'm gonna end, and I'll see you some other time.